Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I hope I'm going live about now, and I have a special
Hello,
visitor
everybody.
today. As I've shown you, my nephew yesterday and my dog. Well, not my dog, but my nephew's dog. Here's my niece Amelia. She just wanted to say hi, and we'll continue with the regularly scheduled program right on. I apologize for some of the technical issues. You want to show?
Okay, bye.
Willst du noch den Bär zeigen?
Yes.
She wanted to show you a toy I gifted her today. And then... Okay. Great. Ciao.
Ciao. Bye.
Bye. So yeah, I'm really sorry for the technical issues and how it all came together. My OBS just crashed and forced me to basically have to create a new live stream. No idea what really happened there. So hope everything works. I know this will be horrible for the algorithm. We probably won't have anywhere near the viewers we had like yesterday or something like that. But I still really wanted to come in, really wanted to discuss with you the new MacBook Pro, Apple's announcements for the M4 Max chip, even some surprising stuff like the fact that the new MacBook Pro features a center stage camera. Some stuff one might like, some stuff one might like less, like the fact that they're still like reusing Wi-Fi 6E tech and not giving us full Wi-Fi 7. So there is still a lot to talk about. As always, please join, please be a lively chatter in the live stream. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet done so. Like the video, share it out to anybody who you think might enjoy it as well. And of course, you can support this channel directly as well. You can become a channel member right here on YouTube. You can become a Patreon supporter. So plenty of different opportunities in how you can support us. Lessons in Hilda Coulter joining us from yesterday's stream, saying, how am I doing? I'm very tired, unfortunately. I've been out for the entire day, as you guys have seen, with my family. And Kev Chata also joining the stream. Thank you all so much for finding your way back. I know we usually don't have as big streams here on this channel as yesterday. I believe we peaked at 103 or 104 people. So we are definitely gonna try to get back to that, but I don't expect it after the disaster which happened after, like, as my OBS crashed. So, but as always, let me know what you think of today's announcement, what you agree with me, what you disagree with me on, and let's just look into what Apple has announced today, because we do have pretty big news in my opinion. I have no idea why my iPad just tried to connect to my AirPods, because my AirPods aren't even open or in my ear, so I'm just getting crazy. Schnitzelnoodle joining in German, wishing everyone a nice evening. Welcome back. Guten Abend zurück. So today we are talking about Apple's new MacBook Pro, and actually beyond the MacBook Pro, right? I actually don't know who covered it first, but I guess it's not as crazy, right? Apple's Mac lineup now starts with at least 16 gigabytes, ending the 8 gigabyte era. Typomaster, because they just work. Yeah, well, OBS doesn't just work, unfortunately, on any system. And I believe it's Oni-chan joining the chat, saying hello Mark, hello Oni-chan. So Apple just updated actually the MacBook Air right now with both the M2 and the M3 version, and giving it 16 gigabytes of base RAM, still keeping with 256 gigabytes of base storage, but now the pricing still makes sense. A lot of us speculated, well, if Apple doesn't increase the pricing of the new M4 MacBook Pro, but keeps the same pricing as before on the M2 and M3 version, well, that will entirely destroy the value proposition of those devices. And thankfully, they thought of that as well, and they gave us these devices with much more memory, which of course there is a big uplift. YTKR, long-term supporter of the channel, joining. Kevcheta saying, finally MacBook Pro talk. Yeah, you've been asking for that from the very start. MacBook Pro 14-inch M3 Pro 18, 512 gigabytes, or MacBook Pro 14-inch M4 non-Pro, 16 gigabytes and 512. You know what? It might partially depend on where you live and what kind of deal you could get for the M3 Pro. Because if you can get that M3 Pro version for below the price of the regular M4 version, right, you get a bit more memory, you get faster storage, you get a little bit more multi-core performance as far as, well, the binned one really isn't that great anymore. It really might depend on your use case. Neon Tran saying Apple feeling pressure from Windows machine for sure. I would say there is potential for pressure here, especially as Lunar Lake becomes more important, or like designs like that, or, you know, like 4 performance, 4 efficiency cores, 8 GPU cores. A lot of those chips have been giving users a lot of integrated memory, whether it's 16 or 32 even. AMD has a lot of devices out right now that give you like very, very affordable 24 gigabyte configurations. So yeah, there's definitely pressure on Apple, and that's a good thing. And there is also pressure on Apple from themselves, because with how good M1 devices are, and with it how good even M2 and M3 devices are, because they're of course all slightly better than M1, they really felt the need, well, if we are trying to sell people like M4s, M5s, M6 down the road, purely performance enhancements might not really be the game changer for people to actually buy it. We have to create value incentives, and my speculation is that this year it's a RAM value that is being upped. And next year, I wouldn't be surprised if we got away from 256 gigabytes the same way we just got rid of 8 gigabyte configurations. Onichan saying, I'm for Max. Max looks too good. I'm now torn between getting the Mini or the Studio. The Mini is so small and cute. You have to know what your use cases are, right? Because the M4 Max doesn't give you that much additional CPU power anymore, right? It's just 12 P cores versus 10 P cores, but of course it can double your GPU power. That's a big deal if you have a workflow in that regard, or if you're like a video editor, then the Max chip has double the media encoders. That will help. So yeah, really dependent on your use case, because don't forget, the M4 Max is a lot more expensive. You aren't just paying for more chip, but usually also for more memory, because the starting configuration for the Max chip is significantly higher than for the Pro chip. Diplomaster, nano textures tempting me. I recently got an anti-glare screen protector. I've heard from people saying that on the laptops, the nano like texture is actually more appealing to them than it is on the desktop counterparts, because it's just like, it's much cooler, right? Like you're using it outdoors, now you have 1000 nits peak brightness and potentially nano texture. Like on an iMac, like really, bro, like it's not going to be a complete game changer. So yeah, I fully understand. On the MacBook Pro, it's very appealing. Yeah, they are saying they did a lot of that to give you like Apple Intelligence a boost, like give it more memory, but it is an interesting start nonetheless, right? They didn't like give you way cheaper memory, right? 8 gigabytes of additional memory still cost you $200 on the base upgrades, right? From 16 to 24 and from 24 to 32. It's then when you go to up to 48 or 30 or 64, memory actually becomes cheaper again per gigabyte. So the pros actually, well, I guess it would be too insane to then ask those still like per gigabyte crazy prices, because even pros might not be enticed to spend like several $1,000s there. YTKR, why Apple uses nano texture instead of regular anti-reflective coating like the S24 Ultra? The S24 Ultra has a very advanced anti-glare coating for like a smartphone size screen. The iPhone also does have anti-reflective stuff, It's just that the advantage of nano texture versus any kind of still glossy display is huge. Like, the Galaxy will not be as good as a nano texture screen from Apple. It might still give you better colors because it is still a glossy solution, but it will not help you with reflections anywhere near as much. Guys, we have about 30 people watching. That's so cool. Please hit the like button. It really helps attract more people. We probably won't get to the 180 from yesterday, but if we can get to 40 or 50 people watching by you hitting the like button, getting us to 15 likes, getting us to 20 likes, that would be amazing. A spec up M4 Mini Pro is just $100 away from a Studio with Max chip. Well, yes, but that's because the Studio right now is based on the M2 generation. So double the memory bandwidth on the Mac Studio, while that might sound attractive in some way, you're still held back by significantly lower single core performance, by a much older neural engine, by a GPU that doesn't support hardware accelerated ray tracing, mesh shading, or dynamic caching. So while the raw power is there in the Mac Studio, I'm not denying that, its advantages for real life, for most consumers, even most prosumers probably, are very limited. So I just really wanted to start with the entire memory discussion because it's really crazy to see this big uplift to 16 gigabyte across the board, but also fundamentally it makes sense, right? Because if Apple didn't do that, then the MacBook Air would look like just very poor value. Guys, there are so many messages in the chat right now. If you want me to be guaranteed to read your message, make it a super chat. Doesn't have to be an expensive one, but it helps the channel tremendously and it helps me pick out chats. Flowering Doom saying, getting the base M4 Mini, I'm just going to use it as a portable device when I'm outside. Will complete all rendering work when I'm back on my desktop. Really? Well, you still know that you have to power it somehow, right? And you have to connect it to some kind of screen. Like, really? You're getting the M4 Mini here, not like a MacBook? Could you explain that thought to me? Because would you use it with like an external screen or something like that? Like, you know, those like very thin like portable screens? CW Griswold, welcome also back to the chat from yesterday. Mac Studio is becoming less appealing. Well, I would say ever since the introduction of M3 Max, the current Mac Studio with M2 technology has really been unappealing, unfortunately. Neatron M4 base MacBook Pro is a good deal. Yes, absolutely. That $15.99 is actually, in my opinion, if you want more storage or if you want more RAM, you should really at that point also consider getting the M4 Pro MacBook Pro. But if you're just happy with the performance and everything, get it with 16 gigs of memory, get it with 512 gigs of storage. For all more extreme needs, maybe get an external drive or something like that, and you'll be very happy. Onicha, nano texture doesn't wear off compared to anti-reflective coating. Yeah, but for most people that's probably not as big of an issue. Kev Chatter, I think Apple website no longer sells M3 MacBooks. Well, they sell the MacBook Air. Let me get to apple.com. Okay, great. I just saw you would have seen my share sheet with all my favorites if my face hadn't been covering it. That's really good. So MacBook Air by... No, those are all M2 and M3 versions. Of course, Apple still sells M3 Max, just not on the MacBook Pro, yeah. Tipo Master, does nanotexture get rid of the slight red speckling effect matte coatings give? Yes, it doesn't have it, but it does have other issues. You should probably look to some YouTubers who are very like professionals who are using their devices outside all the time, and maybe ask them like what is their experience with nanotexture. And especially on laptops where it's new, I would maybe wait and see what reviewers have to say about that. Relay, welcome to the chat as well. I might donate sometime because I really like the streams, but I wait for now though. That's absolutely fine. Lessons in Hilda culture. I understand that there's a degree of trust and familiarity that has to be built, and I have built it with some people, obviously not everyone who has been new to the stream yesterday and the day before that. Yeah, absolutely understand. YouTube Kulanchisi, also welcome. Wi-Fi 7 seems to be a notable omission. Yes, but if you actually look at Apple specs for Wi-Fi 7 on the iPhone 16 and 16 Pro, it has the same speed as Wi-Fi 6E, right? Apple still limits it to 2.4 gigabits per second. So the modems that they bought for the iPhone, they are more efficient. They do support they don't support everything that Wi-Fi 7 does. They don't support 320 megahertz wide bandwidth, I guess you could call it. So yeah, this is why the speed isn't actually an improvement, unfortunately, on Apple's current Wi-Fi 7 solutions. So I think that Apple is just seeing like, you know what, there are so many value additions here. Let us keep Wi-Fi 7 for next generation. Let us reuse the Wi-Fi 6E modems we have already ordered. Let us really double down on that, on as much stuff as we can reuse. Maybe down the road, I could even see Apple like doubling storage speeds again from like PCIe 3 on the base configurations and PCIe 4 on the Pro and Max versions, but that is not going to happen in the same year, where Apple also gives you double the memory and an actually pretty significant uplift in performance, especially in single core. So let us actually look what has Apple announced today. And there's actually, well, the fascinating thing is they're talking about it as if those are separate things, right? But obviously they do belong together. And that is the MacBook Pro itself, based on M4 family of chips, which is a very nice way to say it. I'm going to keep this for myself, M4 family of chips, and ushers this a new era with Apple Intelligence. You see, Apple keeps on talking about Apple Intelligence. There is one very surprising specification here, and that is the 12 megapixel center stage camera. I always thought those are maybe thicker or something like that, but I mean, I guess if they can fit one into the 5.1 millimeter 13-inch iPad Pro, they probably can fit it into the top bezel of the MacBook Pro. And now I wonder if there will be a differentiation between the M4 MacBook Air and what the MacBook Pro can do. Maybe the MacBook Air stays on its full HD camera, while the MacBook Pro goes to this more superior, in some ways, center stage camera. I've always said I'm not a huge fan of center stage versus like a nice wide angle camera. Like ultra wide really distorts a bit, and it really gives very little light to each individual pixel, like in relation to how much room it is actually covering. But I guess in comparison to the previous 2 megapixel solution, that is still quite nice. KevChat, MacBook Pro M3 Pro, CPU 11 cores, so that's 5 performance cores, 6 GPU 6 efficiency cores, 14 GPU cores, 1000 nits peak brightness. Well, 1000 nits is actually different on the new MacBook Pro versus the previous one. We'll get to that, but 1000 nits was never the peak brightness on the entire screen, and it seems to like this is now the specification. Apple has used 1000 nits though in slightly misleading ways in the past, so I'm actually not quite sure. No nits info comparing M3 Pro is better than M4 base. Yes, in many ways M3 Pro, like, I guess how much do you really benefit from like those additional 15% more single core performance, right? If you can, especially with the beefier GPU on the M3 Pro, you are still getting a lot out of it. Oni-chan saying, for my use case, the M4 Mini Pro spec to up to 48 gigabytes is enough. All right, you mentioned yesterday that you do like video editing and stuff, right? Just hope M4 Max Studio isn't priced in a way I'd want to up the tier, as Apple always prices things. Yeah, I wonder if there will now be a price increase on the Max Studio with the M4 generation, because technically the M4 Mac Mini still got a price increase for its Pro version, right? The M4 Pro, it's in Star configuration, is more expensive than the M2 Pro, but it also gives you more memory at that same pricing. So I wonder if something similar will happen with the Mac Studio from now on. So 12 megapixel center stage camera, Thunderbolt 5, similar to the Mac Mini. Thunderbolt 5 is available on the M4 Pro and the M4 Max versions. So keep that in mind. If you have any need for like a Thunderbolt 5 connectivity accessory, don't buy the base M4 MacBook Pro. There's an all new nano texture display option, and MacBook Pro gets even more capable and even more pro. So M4 Pro, M4 Max, much faster performance, enhanced capabilities, starts still at $1599, but now with 16 gigabytes of memory. 14 and 16-inch models with M4 Pro and M4 Max feature Thunderbolt 5. And the Liquid Retina XDR display that gets even better across all models. So they didn't really like cheap out on the cooling solution. Like I thought, well, maybe the base version could only keep going up to the same 600 nits. Nope, they integrated it across the board. It can now go to 1000 nits brightness for SDR content, which is... This will be the device to get for on-the-go professionals, especially if you combine it with the nano texture option. Guys, we have over 40 people watching. Please consider hitting the like button. It helps tremendously. It attracts new people to the stream. It makes this discussion much more livelier, much more engaged. So if you can do that, that would be a huge help. 50 people watching, phenomenal. Thank you so much for your support these last couple of days. KevCheta, M4 base, 20 gigabyte memory bandwidth, M3 Pro is 150. Yes, you could argue that apparently the M4 has better ray tracing for its GPU than the M3, right? So maybe if that's part of your use case in that regard, maybe the base M4 could still be faster than the M3 Pro. But for basically every task, yes, M3 Pro will be superior. Thank you guys. Thank you. You immediately brought us up to 20 likes. Keep on doing that. You are absolutely phenomenal. So somebody here in the chat said 1000 nits. Yeah, 1000 nits for SDR content. Fantastic. So if you are like on the go professional who really needs the brightest screen and potentially the most versatile screen thanks to nano textures, that's what you should be configuring. NYC person, which model are you guys going to get? Well, for me, I'm not going to get one because I'm still very happy with my M1 Max 14-inch MacBook Pro. But guys, some of you have already answered that question. Keep the ball on rolling between each other and discuss. I'm thinking M4 Pro with 48 gigabytes. Yeah, 48 gigabytes really sounds like the sweet spot for many people now. While it is still a very expensive upgrade, it's not crazy anymore, right? You're forgoing that crazy $200 extra up front. You'll of course get the extra capabilities of this new device in general. I think that a lot of people will probably say, you know what? A lot of like Windows guys are like saying, oh, my device has 24 or 32 by default. And look, my GPU by itself has 12 or 16. But now you can easily get a MacBook Pro with 48 gigabytes and say like, well, I can use all my 48 gigabytes for Sorry, I asked for supplies, some humanitarian help, because without my Coke I will not be able to keep going. Nihal saying MacBook Air M2 16 gigabytes versus MacBook Pro M1. Well, the base upgrade consideration from M1 to M2, I would never upgrade from M1 to M2, but obviously if you can get the M2 version, why not? I mean, like 30% more GPU performance, a bit more CPU performance. And there is, of course, now the extra value of more memory. However, I highly recommend you guys now maybe go to like a reused or refurbished market and look at the pricing for 8 gigabyte models. Thank you. Cheers, guys. I was resupplied by my cousin and my niece. It's all okay. So if you are someone who can live with 8 gigabytes, that's really not going to be a terrible, like you might get like an 8 gigabyte device for like at this point like paper money, like, well, paper is money, but you know what I mean, for basically free. M4 Max SDR brightness 1000 nits, M3 Pro Max SDR brightness 600 nits. Yes, exactly, that is correct. Joshua Dr. J.K. Carp thoughts M1 Ultra with 64 gigs of RAM versus Mac Mini with M4 Pro. Mac Mini with M4 Pro. The difference in like single core performance for system responsiveness, if you can match the memory configuration, of course at that point the Studio with an Ultra chip will now be cheaper actually than the Mac Mini in some ways maybe. Well, not officially from Apple, but you know, from like, if you might get it like refurbished from some pro guy who's trying to get rid of it. But yeah, in my opinion, just the new architecture in general is such a huge improvement. 12 megapixel center stage camera, already mentioned that. 24 hours of battery life, the longest ever in the Mac. We'll later get to the comparison page and have a look in how the battery life not only compares to the previous generation, but also between the different versions of this generation. The new MacBook Pro is available for pre-order today, availability beginning November 8th. That is the same as it is for the Mac Mini and the M4 iMac, so decide by then. I have no idea what the availability will look like, if there might be some supply constraints, if you might have to wait until like what was I gonna say? Like the holiday season before you can realistically get it. And of course, once you get it, let me know how it performs for you. Guys, around 44 people watching. Get us to about 30 likes. Hit the like button. Help us attract more people. Help us growing. Make this discussion super lively, super engaged. Keep me longer with you. Oni-chan, since people asked about nanotexture, I have experience with it. Well, thank you very much for that. They could have glitter effects and some people hated it. Search up Shingting Glitter Sparkle. Mostly happen on 16 inches and smaller screens. Wait, did Apple have nanotexture displays on laptops ever? As far as I understand, nanotexture is something they only introduced with the Pro Display XDR. In the past, they used to have proper, like, you know, like those grayish, like anti-glare covers on the screens. But if you say so, I think Apple's best product announcement from the 3 was the new redesigned Mac Mini. Well, apparently that's what you think, and that's what most of the audience thinks, because yesterday we had up to 180 people watching, now we have 40. So yeah, I think a lot of people agree. However, never forget that Apple's laptops just sell better than their desktops. So even if us as enthusiasts, we might be really gushing for the $599 a Mac Mini, somebody who might need like a PC, let's call it a PC, for like school or university or even most work, right? Most people will probably want a laptop in that regard. Right, they do have nanotexture on iPad Pro. True. But I guess the issue with the iPad Pro is that you used, of course, it with touch and even with the Apple Pencil. So some wear and tear that people have talked about on happening maybe on the iPad Pro, I don't foresee it happening the same way on the MacBook Pro, right? Does that make sense to everyone? CapChat M4 up to 24 hours of video streaming, M3 Pro up to 18 hours. That's correct. I assume those are the slightly more efficient encoders and decoders at work. I would be interested to see if maybe the capacity is in any way different. We are going to look into the tech specs and everything. Don't worry. So yeah, there's a lot still to discuss. NYC person, they also have an iPad Pro. Okay, so we are, guys, getting to more and more stuff, and you're helping each other out. That's phenomenal. I love it when the community grows, when you guys can help each other out. Absolutely great stuff. MacBook Pro is an incredibly powerful tool that millions of people use to do their life's best work, and today we're making it even better. Right, I said that, by the way, in the previous videos. Apple has also posted a MacBook Pro announcement video on YouTube. So this basically confirms that Apple had a small event in mind, and they cut it up into 3 portions, posted everything separately on their newsroom page. To me, it's absolutely phenomenal, because if the video is not what everyone is watching and getting their info from, it attracts much more of you to my channel. But I don't know what that will mean for people and for general, like, I guess, knowledge about how people perceive these devices. But I guess for us as the tech community, it is a cool way to try to make these announcements. So, Thunderbolt 5, 12 megapixel center stage, all new nano texture display option. It's funny, they don't even mention like higher brightness here. Apple Intelligence, blah, blah, blah. So, supercharged by M4 family of chips, which to Apple was so important, they even made a whole website for it, which is honestly cool. I know they've done so in the past, but they've actually given us quite a lot of details, because usually most people would see that, of course, in Apple's keynote, and they do talk about them, of course, in those YouTube videos, but having it all written down nicely is actually very, very nice. So, base M4, or like M4 that is not the Pro or the Max version, 10-core CPU, 10-core GPU. Similar to the Mac Mini, there is no binning happening on the MacBook Pro, so you don't have to think about it. Well, there is binning, of course, on the M4 Pros and on the M4 Max chips, but if you are getting the base version, it is fully enabled, similar to the new Mac Mini. They also call it Apple's most advanced graphics architecture, which, again, I always mention it. They did promise that the A18 Pro renders ray tracing twice as fast as the A17 Pro. So it will be very interesting to see if the M4 shows similar advancements versus the M3. Of course, the 16 gigabytes of extra of oh, bless me, I guess. Sorry, guys. With 16 gigabytes of starting memory, configurable up to 32. Unfortunately, as I said in the past, to anybody who thought, well, maybe the upgrade to 32 would now be cheaper per gigabyte, right? No, it's still $400 divided by one upgrade to 24 gigabytes and one upgrade then to 32. I wish they would have at least like simplified it, make it one upgrade path from 16 right to 32, maybe charge $300, ideally $200, but alas, Apple still likes their profit margins. You get 120 gigabytes per second on the base M4 chip, and they are, as always, making comparisons with M1. And even here, interestingly enough, they are mentioning Blender workflows that are 3.4 times faster. It's interesting because Blender does support, like, of course, now they support the Metal API. They should support ray tracing, right? So in that regard, while this uplift in GPU performance is obviously higher than the rasterization uplift, it always surprises me that it's not like 4x or more. Given that what we've seen, like when Nvidia jumped from, for example, from the GTX 1000 series to the RTX 2000 series, they had like a 4, 5, 6x uplift in certain workflows. But yeah, interesting. Maybe Apple is using some kind of task that isn't really responsive to that. Talk Gaming saying, remember I donated you? I am not sure. If you did, that's very much appreciated, Talk Gaming. It is getting a little, now that our community's gotten a lot larger, it is getting more difficult. I won't lie about that, unfortunately. So if I don't remember any of you, like I remember you by your name, Talk Gaming, I believe you said you became a member or something like that. If you did, then absolutely. I didn't check yet out my member, my member numbers on YouTube or on Patreon. But if you did, that's also very cool. So thank you to anybody who is supporting. Onichan saying nobody's going to touch a MacBook screen, right? That time when someone expects touch on a laptop. Yeah. CapChatter M4 up to 16 hours, M4 Pro up to 14 hours. What are those battery lives? 16 hours of what? Like MacBook Pro, new private tab. There are the tech specs. Talk Gaming, I had to switch to my 5 gigahertz to order my Mac quicker. Well, congratulations on pre-ordering, I guess. Let's look at the battery life hours here. 1000 nits sustained full screen. And right. So that was previously different. They had full screen sustained brightness at 1000 nits, but that was only for XDR content. And now I believe they mean with that it will automatically get you up to 1000 nits in outdoor brightness, while probably manually you can get it to like 600-700 or something like that. But yeah, when the device senses that you're in a very bright environment, it will give you more. Let us look here. So the battery capacities are the same, 70. No, actually, I believe this is an improvement for the M4 version versus the M3 version, because for some reason the M3 version always had slightly smaller batteries, just by the tiniest amount, versus the Pro and Max versions, and now they're all on the same level. You only get like the faster charger. And yeah, in battery life, you were mentioning wireless web hours. Yeah, because obviously video streaming is a lot more. So on the M4 you get up to 24 hours of video streaming. On the M4 Pro you get up to 22 hours of video streaming, and on the M4 Max you get up to 18 hours of video streaming. So I assume just that idle power draw by the rest of the die, even if it's not actually doing anything, it might be just the encoders at work. Yeah, there is now a pretty big penalty for the M4 Max version. In all honesty, these days, like I do have the M1 Max MacBook Pro, but seeing these stats, I might be inclined to get an Pro version instead. Obviously, there's a huge difference in Max GPU capabilities, but if you value battery life, I guess this is kind of like, this is the king in terms of absolute peak that you can get. While I would argue this is the king because while it gives you slightly less peak battery life, you will get potentially a lot more done with that battery life. NYC person, I think the contrast is improved to 1,000,000 to 1. I don't think the previous screens had this. I actually think they do. All of Apple's mini LED screens have contrast in that amount. Onichan, I use the Blender on a daily basis. Is it painful on M1 Pro because the performance is like RTX 2070 mobile? Well, that is actually amazing performance for the M1 Pro. How much less power does the M1 Pro draw versus an RTX 2070 mobile, which is more like an RTX 2060? Wait, was there even an RTX? Yeah, there was an RTX 2060 desktop. That's not bad. In real world, it feels more like an RTX 2050 mobile. Yeah, that I actually understand, and I assume probably the difference is that a lot of benchmarks that you see are for rasterization games, and then of course since your usage is Blender, now you're dependent on what is that accelerator called? Aptix? No. You know, like the API by NVIDIA for ray tracing, right? You can use CUDA, but then there optics, that's what it's called. And optics is ridiculously fast in Blender. It's absolutely magnificent in that regard. Talk Gaming donating today. I don't need proof of your prior donations. Leaving £2. Thank you so much. Now that I actually see pounds, I might actually remember you, but then you didn't mean you donated yesterday, right? You donated sometime way in the past. Regardless, you guys now see how super chats work here in the community. I'll be guaranteed to read your message in the sentence of Talk Gaming. It's ding dong, eat it up, eat well, and mix it up. You see, you can get me to say something funny with a small donation like that, because I'm a freaking whore, apparently. So, interesting battery stats. Nothing crazy, I guess. I think, if anything, the M4 Pro, I wonder if there is a meaningful difference between the 8 performance core version and the 10 performance core version. The M4 Max definitely is the one that is most impaired here by just how huge the die is. But still very good battery life, of course. I don't think that you will get any Windows laptop with anywhere near the performance of M4 Max with that kind of battery life. YouTube Cool and Cheesy, long-term supporter of the channel, saying, I'm curious about the Blender benchmark result of these chips. With the 2 times faster ray tracing, I think they might finally catch up with NVIDIA. They will catch up with RTX 4000 to then lose against RTX 5000 next year. Of course, PC power stuff on Nichan is sometimes difficult, because even with like an RTX 2070, you can configure it like super low in like the 40-50 watt range, but then you can also push it like above 80 as far as I know. Lesson Hildeculture, £2 is £2. Yeah, I guess it is. Well, no, it's actually not. Don't forget, guys, YouTube keeps a significant portion of the money you are giving. So, £2 that you give is actually not £2 that I get. Plus, of course, I have to pay taxes. So I guess £2 here is more like £1 in the end. Once I get discount what YouTube takes and then what the government takes. So this is that. Let's continue what Apple is saying here. Neural Engine is 3 times faster than M1. That scaling makes sense. What's important is I think that Apple really means 3 times more powerful here, because if we just look at TOPS ratings, that is a little bit difficult sometimes to compare. These TOPS ratings, they are also impacted, of course, by the memory bandwidth of your device. Could that become a potential bottleneck? And of course, this is just neural engine performance. Don't forget that because we are talking about a tightly integrated SoC where each part can leverage the bandwidth and the system level cache, you can combine the AI powers of the neural engine with some of the CPU, the GPU, even all of it simultaneously, and get a lot of great results that you might not get by a similarly powerful, like purely neural device or neural performance. Wait, what is it called? NPU is like GPU graphics power unit? No, why? How could I forget that, right? But versus a similarly powered NPU, Apple definitely is very good at leveraging the entire performance of the SoC. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. The M4 model also supports 2 high-resolution external screens in addition to the built-in display. So that's already an improvement, of course, versus the previous M3 version, which did support 2 external displays, but only if you closed the lid on your MacBook and it wasn't displayed displaying anything on its integrated display. Andrew Dufala, M3 Max with the unbinned version performs a little bit above the desktop version of the 4070 Blender. Yeah, the fully enabled M3 Max is really, really good. Especially for its power consumption. Schnitzel noodle, neural processing unit, right? The P stands for processing. It's central processing unit, it's graphics processing unit, and it's neural processing unit. I have no idea how I could have mixed that up, right? And now featuring 3 Thunderbolt 4 ports, so that lines up with what the Russian YouTubers were saying. What is interesting, I guess maybe I didn't look enough into what the Russian leakers were saying. What's interesting is that I didn't hear from them stuff like, oh, the display gets a lot brighter, or look, the camera gives you center stage. I assume that just means that they didn't really test it enough, or for some reason. Maybe they faked it, who knows, but they definitely weren't giving you like very, very in-depth reviews there, given that more stuff has changed. So M4, this is, we have seen similar comparisons yesterday, of course, 7 times faster image processing in Affinity Photo. This is versus a Core i7 13-inch MacBook Pro, and versus the M1, that's 1.8 times faster. It's 11 times faster in 3D rendering in Blender versus a 13-inch MacBook Pro with Core i7. So I assume that here we are talking about an integrated GPU, not a dedicated one, and 3.4 times faster when it over M1, which again, I'm still wondering if maybe Blender is leaving some performance on the table, or if there's some other bottleneck that's coming up, but we have heard these numbers in the past. Almost 10 times faster scene edit detection in Adobe Premiere Pro versus the Intel Mac, or 1.7 times faster versus the M1 MacBook Pro. What's nice is they are comparing here to the 13-inch MacBook Pro with M1, not the Air, because the Pro is the one that was capable of fully sustaining M1 performance, and of course this MacBook Pro is actively cooled, so that's a more valuable comparison. If they compared it to the MacBook Air, I would be a bit more worried. Kev Chatter, with education discount, M4 Pro is $1849, so that's $150 discount. Nice. And M4 Base is $14.99. Really, really cool stuff. MacBook camera center stage can look at your desk now, more like look at that keyboard. Well, I guess, which isn't bad, right? For some people, given your workflow, if you might be like some kind of YouTuber that is giving instructions on how to deal with like keyboard shortcuts and stuff like that, that might be something that a lot of people actually wanted to. Andrew DeFala, here's a website that benches all of the graphics cards for Blender. I know there is one, and it's not that difficult to find, but you cannot post links in the chat, unfortunately. Over time, I want to create a Discord for all of us, so that we can chat as a community. But for now, unfortunately, sending links here is pretty much broken. Well, YouTube forbid it, because some people might post porn or whatever, right? Some might try to trick people into shit. So yeah, sorry about that. Is the M4 enough for Xcode? For a lot of people is, but you should ask around. Some people, I believe here, are other programmers, or at least use Xcode from time to time. I personally don't, but I've heard from most people that like you probably would want the Pro version for Xcode, but you can still get a lot done. Like some stuff will just be slower, but it's not like your capabilities will be inherently limited. Kev Chatter, so with education discount, you save $100 with M4 Base and $150 with M4 Pro. That seems to be correct, which is really, really cool. So now we are talking M4 Pro. A Pro powerhouse. So a powerful 14-core CPU, so that's what we've talked about yesterday with the Mac Mini, up to 10 performance cores and up to 4 efficiency cores. So this is the biggest upgrade here. right? The Pro really, like Apple's, I assume the M3 Pro MacBook Pro probably didn't sell too well, or not as well as Apple might have hoped it would, because the upgrades for the M4 Pro MacBook Pro are much more significant. You get the extra memory, but then you also get that huge performance boost versus what was previously a 5+6 core, so 5 P-core, 6 efficiency cores, to now a base configuration which I believe would be like, what, 8 performance and 4 efficiency cores? So that will be way, way faster. Let me see. Mac, let us try to pre-order. Guys, we're still almost 40 people watching. Get us up to 25 or 30 likes. Help us attract new people. Help us grow the community. I love having so many people watching, so many people commenting, interacting. It's all a crazy big honor for me. So look at M4 Pro, still starting at $19.99. Now instead of starting with 18 gigabytes of unified memory and faster memory as well, you get 24. And yes, you get the 12-core CPU consisting of 8 performance and 4 efficiency cores, and a 16-core GPU, which is obviously a huge uplift over the previous Bint M3 Pro. And then you get the full 20 GPU cores on the M4 Pro here, 1 terabytes of storage. Actually, this update looks kind of banging. I have to say, like $2,400 with 1 terabytes of storage, 24 gigs of unified memory, and I guess for $2,600 you get 32. Wait, how can you wait, do you have a 32 gigabyte configuration here? By the way, I've noticed that Apple's website right now seems pretty unstable. An hour ago, I tried to familiarize myself with the pricing, and here in Germany it was giving me M3 pricing still, so that was a little confusing. So $150 nano texture option, so I assume it's more expensive on the 16-inch version. This is the crazy upgrade, of course, for the M4 Max chip. I would say this is a very expensive upgrade. Most people will very likely not need it. Oh, and you can upgrade to 48 gigabyte it's for $400. Would I get that? I assume I would, because I do have a 14-inch with 32 gigabytes. So I would like my next system to have 36 at the least, hopefully more like 48. 64, unless Apple decides to really reduce the per gigabyte pricing of memory across the board. But this was a banging $2,400 config, I have to say. Fully enabled M4 Pro, 1 terabyte of storage. That really is not a version I would complain about. I wouldn't push that off my bed. Blender benchmark should be taken with a grain of salt. Yeah, absolutely. Blender is way more optimized on Windows. I mean, it was barely available on Mac for so many years. Their implementation was so freaking rudimentary. I guess they were kind of benefiting that Apple was still using AMD GPUs, but it still ran horribly through Metal. Not even through Metal. It didn't support it for a long time. So now it's definitely better, but it's still not far from being super optimized. KevChat is saying, I got M3 Pro 18512 for $1,475. M4 Pro 24512 is $1,849. $374 difference. Worth returning M3 Pro for new M4 Pro? If you have the money, I would say yes. But if you're happy with your purchase, almost $400 extra, I mean, that is a big investment, especially if you're also still gonna stick with 512 gigs of storage. But I personally, I might return it if I could, right? It depends on when you purchased it. But I think you probably aren't looking into into the into spending even more for like 1 terabyte or something like that, something that could actually like change your user experience potentially. Oh my god, would I do this? Yeah, I would do it, but I don't think I would recommend it to everyone. Present Shiva, welcome back also to the stream. I think gaming will be good with external 240Hz display. Yeah, but you need the support from the actual games and developers. Lessons in Hilda culture. People are ordering too many MacBooks. Yeah, I'm getting a little jealous myself here, brother. And Joseph at Guerrero is saying, also long-term supporters saying, I'm mostly curious on the impact of the new 546 gigabytes per second of memory bandwidth. Yeah, like, but we saw that yesterday where Apple was in some case saying like, oh, M4 Pro is like only so and so much faster, like 10-20%. And I'm like, really? With that huge memory bandwidth increase across the board? Like, even versus the M2 Pro, which went up to 200, we're still talking almost a 40% increase in bandwidth. And then versus the M3 Pro, we're talking 75% increase in memory bandwidth. Onyichan saying 48 gigabytes of RAM is minimum for running LLM. Yeah, absolutely true. Apple wants to push that option into more people's hands, absolutely, because of that. But let's actually continue with what Apple has to say. 20-core GPU version, twice as powerful as M4. So Apple, similar to what they did yesterday with the Mac Mini, they're promising linear scaling here. A lot more memory bandwidth. That of course comes from the fact that I already mentioned it. They did cut down the memory bus from 256-bit on the M2 Pro to 192 bits on the M3 Pro. And not only that, but Apple isn't just using slightly faster memory, like the M4 uses 7500 mega transfers per second memory, but the M4 Pro and M4 Max actually use 8533 megahertz memory, so a lot faster there. So if you're somebody who really wants to get the most out of your chip, and Joseph Guerrero is also somebody who I usually chat about stuff like that, yeah, there is a lot here that the M4 Pro and Max chips are offering that some of us didn't even suspect until yesterday. I'm more into MacBook Mini because I don't take my computer with me so often. MacBook Mini, you mean the Mac Mini? Because if there was a MacBook Mini, believe me, I would know. I follow Apple a lot. So those are the promises for M4 Pro. Max on Redshift, 4 times faster scene rendering versus the 16-inch MacBook Pro with Core i9. The dogs are going crazy today. And up to 3 times faster when compared to the 16-inch MacBook Pro with M1 Pro. 5 times faster simulation here, 2.2 times faster versus M1 Pro. 23.8 times faster base scaling for DNA sequencing. I still have no idea what this chip actually utilizes. Okay, I cannot close my windows because they are already closed, but I can still hear the dogs. Okay. And it's 1.8 times faster versus the 16-inch MacBook Pro with M1 Pro. Daniel Johansson, yeah, you meant the Mac Mini. Good to know. Guys, we've been streaming for about an hour. Small shout out as always. If you haven't yet subscribed to the channel, please consider doing so. If you're liking what you're seeing, like the video, share it out to anybody who you think might enjoy it. Comment, and this is a big plea, please comment live, but also please comment afterwards on the video, like a brief hi or just that you like the content. It will help a lot. And of course, if you want to support this channel directly, you guys have seen super chat, super stickers in the chat. You can also become a channel member right here on YouTube or a supporter over on Patreon. Wait, no, M4 Max and Mac Mini? No, there is not enough cooling capacity in the new Mac Mini in any way for the M4 Max. So Design for pros. Okay, so here we are talking M4 Max. M4 Max, let's see what Apple promises. 16-core CPU here, so we're talking still 12 performance and 4 efficiency cores, the same as on the M3 Max. And this is one slight disappointment for me. With all the extra CPU cores on the M3 Pro, I had hoped that Apple would give us more GPU cores on the M4 Max. Alas, it still uses 40 GPU cores. Apple probably didn't want to completely blow up the die size, make it super duper expensive to build, and over half a terabyte per second of unified memory bandwidth, which, how much is it? I believe Joseph, yeah, it's 546 gigabytes per second. So crazy memory bandwidth for a laptop without a dedicated graphics card. The neural engine 3 times faster than M1 Max. You see the scaling is the same, right? M4 versus M1 at 3 times faster neural engine. That's because the neural engine is actually the same. That does surprise me is that Apple didn't double down on the neural engine. I could see them giving like the M4 Max maybe 2 neural engines, and just be like, look, if you're the most advanced LLM like engineer ever, get like the Max chip. But they didn't. With M4 Max, MacBook Pro delivers up to 3.5 times the performance of M1 Max, ripping through heavy creative workloads like visual effects, 3D animation, and film scoring. Okay. It also supports up to 128 gigabytes of unified memory. This is a big advantage over any Windows laptop right now. Even some, of course, of the SoC solutions won't go above 64. There's also a big question with these chips if you can actually get like full bandwidth support for every part of it. Sometimes most of them really focus on like, oh, the GPU gets all the bandwidth, right? But Apple has been historically the most aggressive in making sure that the CPU can also leverage, if maybe not all the bandwidth, but a lot of it, and the same with the neural engine. So I would love to see, especially once Strix Halo comes out, what the actual comparisons looks like for works on LLMs. They're saying you can work with nearly 200 billion parameters here, which is quite crazy, and M4 Max has double the media encoders with 2 ProRes accelerators. Again, really depends on your workflow. I could never probably benefit from it anytime soon, but some of you might, so keep that in mind. You don't just get the same accelerators, you get more of them. So 7.8 times faster. This is versus the 16-inch MacBook Pro here with Intel. Then 3.5 times faster versus M1 Max. Then in terms of Xcode, it's 2.2 times faster versus M1 Max. This is where you leverage, of course, everything from the faster single core performance, more bandwidth, but also just more CPU cores in general. 30.8 times faster video processing performance in Topaz Video AI. This is versus Intel, but then only a very small uplift after talking so much about how much faster the neural engine is. It's only 1.6 times faster than the M1 Max. So I'm really wondering if Apple is hitting some like bottlenecks here because there is nothing in the M4 Max that is only 1.6 times faster versus the M1 Max. The GPU is faster than that. The CPU is faster than that. The neural engine is faster than that. I guess it lines up pretty well with the amount of bandwidth that you have, because the M1 Max had 400 gigabits per second, and this one now has 546. So maybe that's, but I mean, that's still like not even a full 50% uplift. Well, I guess that would be decent scaling if it's actually bandwidth limited. So maybe that's the issue here, if you want to call it that. But this is one thing that really stuck out to me, like a 1.6x promise for over like 3 generations, over M2 Max, M3 Max, now M4 Max, is surprisingly low, especially considering how much more Apple has focused on like neural processing units over the last couple of years. Royals KE, I think the most impressive thing here is that 3 Thunderbolt 5 ports, yes, on the M4, it's actually quite cool because it explains a lot. Right, if you have like 4 display controllers, well, it all, of course, it also scales with resolution and something like that. Let's say you have 4 Thunderbolt controllers, or like I don't even know if you can call everything on Apple's die the same way you would do on like an Intel chip, because I guess Apple can also very easily just have 4 controllers, right, with 3 of them dedicated to either Thunderbolt 4 or on the more high-end chips to Thunderbolt 5. And then one of them is just like a general PCIe controller, I guess, and it controls like the internal storage. So because Apple doesn't give us the full breakdown and we are dependent on those die shots and the analysis by like third parties, I always try to not use terms that I just read from a completely third-party website that did analysis on Apple without ever asking on an Apple engineer. But yeah, we did, for example, see that the M4 has doubled the controllers, so Thunderbolt, or however you want to call them, that versus the M3, M2, M1. So that explains how it can address more displays. This is how it can have one more port, and in fact one more full speed port. So yeah, a big value proposition here. Adds versatility to the device. You can charge it from either side, and if you are controlling multiple monitors, previously you would have to buy the Pro or Max chips, and now you can keep with the base version. Kevcheta, wow, M4 Pro 273 gigabyte memory bandwidth, M3 Pro 150, yeah, 75% uplift, absolutely crazy. YTKR, M4 or M3 MacBook Air 15-inch, I don't care about performance. Well, one is available, right? The M3 MacBook Air actually exists. There is no M4 MacBook Air. For now, there's only M4 MacBook Pro. How much space do macOS use in new installation? No idea. Haven't installed one in quite a while. Don't forget, you're also losing some storage to just the drive formatting and stuff like that. So usually in like a 1 terabyte system, you could lose like 60, 70 gigabytes or something like that. Okay, so they didn't talk too much more about the chips here, but now we're getting to the Liquid Retina XDR display, 1000 nits of brightness in outdoor scenarios. HDR content still gives you 1600 nits. 12 megapixel center stage camera. I guess now they're leveraging the notch at least a little bit more than in the past. Of course, a lot of people have asked, when are we finally getting Face ID in that notch? That's still not happening today, but at least you get a quote-unquote better camera. YTK, I meant the 14-inch M4 MacBook Pro. Well, yeah, if you're comparing the M3 MacBook Air, the passively cool device, with everything else inferior, yeah, the M4 MacBook Pro at $1,600, it's of course better. But I mean, it better be. It is also more expensive. Kevchat, YT wrote M3 Air or MacBook Pro M4. Yeah, you guys are helping each other out. Joseph Guerrero, neural engine is 3 times faster than M1. Reference M4 MacBook Pro. Yeah, I'm not denying that. I'm just saying that one specific workflow that they mentioned here, which is Topaz Video AI, right? They're saying it's 1.6 times faster, and I'm just wondering why it doesn't scale with either the neural engine performance that Apple addresses. Even the CPU itself is mostly advertised as being a bigger uplift than that. So I'm just wondering. I'm not angry. I'm not using Topaz Video AI, so... Nima Podorshadi is saying, interesting thing is we have 14-core M4 Pro and 14-core M4 Max. Are we going to see a difference in CPU-wise? You're going to see a difference in multi-core performance, but it's probably not going to be huge. It's the difference of 8 plus 4... Wait, what core configurations do we have exactly on the base? Oh, you mean... Oh yeah, wait, what? Do we have a bint? Okay, pre-order. I'm gonna clear this up in my head. So M4 Pro, it goes up to 10. Wait, it's 14 cores. That's 10 performance and 4 efficiency cores. This is 10 performance and 4 efficiency cores. And this is 12 performance and 4 efficiency cores. Oh, no, you probably won't actually. Between these two models, you're actually just getting the faster GPU and the faster bandwidth and the extra media encoders. But while that is all nice and good, yeah, that's actually a very diminishing value proposition to not get any significant CPU upgrade from the full M4 Pro to the base M4 Max. That's no idea why they made it this way. I guess the M4 Pro is way too good. I saw some people speculate that the M4 Pro is basically just a cut down M4 Max again, the way it was on the M1 and the M2 generation, and then on the M3 generation, that those were completely separate dies. I wonder if that's the case again, and this is why the difference is so small. But yeah, I actually didn't really consider that. Around 24 gigabytes free space just for the OS to function well. OS will not boot if you have 1 megabyte left. Yeah, that is true. YTKR, what do you think is better regardless the performance and price? Well, if the price is regardless, then yeah, get the fastest, highest end M4 Max. There is a problem though, which I did cover, that the M4 Pro will give you potentially better battery life than the M4 Max. So if you cannot leverage that extra GPU power, I probably would still go with the M4 Pro. The difference in battery life that is advertised is actually quite significant. To 256 gigabyte base for SSD is a disgrace. None of the Macs that are being announced today start with 256 gigabytes, while we did talk about that the MacBook Air got 16 gigabytes for its base configuration. Those base configurations already existed, right? Those are not new devices. All the MacBook Pros that were introduced today start at least at 512 gigabytes. You got to decide if 15 or 14 inch matters too. True. And I guess you guys are helping each other decide which Macs to buy. That's absolutely fantastic. Let's see what else Apple's covers here. Liquid Retina, 12 megapixel center stage, Thunderbolt 5. So 120 gigabits per second. We've talked about it yesterday. Apple, so the way Thunderbolt 4 works, right? It gives you 40 gigabits per second in each direction, so up and down, but you cannot combine them. And Thunderbolt 5, while it is 2 times faster overall, which means it gives you 80 gigabytes in either direction, you can actually combine the two streams and send 120, so not the full 160, but still 75% of it in one direction. This is how Thunderbolt 5 might only be 2 times faster in total bandwidth, but for a lot of use cases, that will actually mean that its total throughput will be 3 times faster, which is absolutely amazing. It enables faster external storage, expansion chassis, and powerful docking and hub solutions. True, but I also think it will be really cool for external displays. For example, connecting just a single cable, pros like music producers can now light up their entire studio. All MacBook Pro model features an HDMI 2.1 port that supports up to 8K resolution, an SDXC card slot. Don't know if it's a faster SDXC standard. Apple probably doesn't care too much about it. I mean, look look how little the SD card actually fits into the device. They really didn't want to give up too much internal space for SD card support. Maybe they gave us faster SD card support, but who knows. MagSafe 3 is still on the side, and yes, we did cover it quickly. There's no Wi-Fi 7, no Bluetooth 5.4, no Bluetooth 6. Granted, Bluetooth 5.3 can probably effortlessly be upgraded to 5.4, but with Wi-Fi 6E, there's no Wi-Fi 7 here. If that is really important to you for some reason, I probably couldn't think why, because the strength of the antenna is what matters the most, and the modems inside the Macs have been very good for years, but this is something you should keep in mind. This is most likely getting updated with the next generation. I assume we will not just be getting Wi-Fi 7 the way we got them on the iPhone 16 and 16 Pro, where it still maxes out at 2.4 gigabytes per second, but I also assume that this will be faster Wi-Fi 7, maybe one that goes up to 4.8 gigabytes per second or something like that. And then there's also a newer Bluetooth 6 specification. I believe Qualcomm is already pushing it on the Snapdragon 8 Elite. Doesn't change too much, but it's not bad. So if you want to wait for stuff like that, consider yourself warned, right? I was thinking of returning M3 Pro for base M4, but now I'm going for M4 Pro. Well, Apple knows how to make their pricing ladders, right? To get you guys to buy something more expensive. YTKR, in display output, the Thunderbolt 5 is the same as HDMI 2.1. This is an issue with Apple, and that is that they like to simplify tech specs sometimes. Where do I not have the tech specs open here? Okay, let me go to the tech specs. There it is. Right, so the display support is, where is it? For external monitors. External monitors. Wait, what? Oh, so 40 gigabits per second Thunderbolts 4 on M4. Here we get Thunderbolt 5 up to 120 gigabits per second. Still support, of course, for Thunderbolt 4 and USB 4. The reason why they're mentioning this is because obviously some accessories might tell you, oh, look, I'm a USB 4 accessory. Look, I'm a Thunderbolt 4 accessory. So to not confuse, Thunderbolt 5 is obviously backwards compatible with all the rest. Maybe Apple even put some extra work into the driver to make sure that all their accessories are supported still very, very well, which sometimes is not always the case, but yeah. Display support. One external display supported at 8K 60, so that is for M4, M4 Pro, at 4K resolution at 240 over HDMI. I like for Thunderbolt, they don't seem to be giving you 240 at all, right? Like, even though they do have Thunderbolt here, right? And they, by the way, they do mention here simultaneous support for native resolution on the built-in display at 1 billion colors, 4 external displays, up to 3 external displays. Why is there no difference between M4 and M4 Pro? That's also a little surprising. They don't mention it, but there must be, because they do support DisplayPort 2.1. DisplayPort 2.1 with DisplayStream compression does give you these kinds of bandwidth. Even without DisplayStream compression, it gives you 8K at 120. Why is Apple not mentioning that? Maybe they just haven't made it into software. Oni-chan, all M2 Pro can do HDMI 2.1, but M1 is stuck HDMI 2.0. Yes, that's true. Wait, did all M2 MacBook Pro support HDMI 2.1? Even the base model? I thought it was just the Pro and the Max version. But yeah, at that point, it's all soup in my head. It's all flowing together, unfortunately. And the HDMI, this is the max for HDMI, 8K 60 or 4K 240. So that is definitely HDMI 2.1 across the board. I'm just a little surprised because like DisplayPort 2.1, right? Specifications. Oh my god, this is so slow. With, let's say, no compression, 5K at 60. Okay, so you get 8K 60 or even 6. Yeah, with DisplayPort 2.1 you get, like, look at these resolutions, guys. Like, if you get 16K 60, you cannot tell me that you wouldn't be able to get even 8K 120. Not that you necessarily need it, but at least, the very least, you would get like 6K 120. So I don't understand it. Why does Apple not list it as official support? I assume that's just so they don't make you. I assume that's just so that they can like not downplay the achievements of the Pro Display XDR, which is 6K 60. So they probably aren't trying to mention significantly higher specs than that, right? 6K 60 over Thunderbolt, or 8K 60 or one external display over HDMI. This does make no sense. The Thunderbolt itself has far higher memory bandwidth. Almost 3 times the memory bandwidth of HDMI 2.1. And Angelica joining the chat saying her workday just ended. By the way, a shout out again to Angelica, Max, Maximus, and Steve, who are all MarkTech Pro Max supporters on this channel. It's one of the ways you can support this channel directly. You can also choose to become a supporter over on Patreon or send super chats, super stickers. Just wanted to mention it because I know from Max and I know from Steve that they usually can never join live or very rarely, so it's usually Angelica joining and reminding me of the fact that you can actually become a channel member with badges, with priority reading of your messages and stuff like that. So whenever I forget it, I apologize. I'm still incredibly grateful to anybody who supports this channel directly or indirectly for that matter. So that's Thunderbolt 5, and then Apple keeps talking about Apple Intelligence because that's a huge part. And yes, MacBook Air, the world's most popular laptop, which I assume will now make this even more popular, now starts at 16 gigabytes. And yes, this also does include the M2 version, which starts all the way down to $999, which is more aggressive than I thought it would be. And the M3 is $100 more at $1099 for also configuration with 16 gigabytes. And Rosa also joined the chat. Hello, welcome to all my supporters who have been here for a long time as well, and of course to anyone who might be new. So this is just the explanation to the MacBooks themselves, but I know we all are nerds here. We all love. I apologize for blinding you. There's no way to turn this page dark in a good way, so you'll have to bear with me through it. Now let's talk about the chips itself. Less than Hilda Culture, should I buy the MacBook Pro or Mac Mini? Because I'm not that sure. Well, I tend to go for laptops, but I'm not sure. Sarah Batul, well, you have a name very similar to one of my best friends. I'm not sure if you are her. Do you think that the M4 Max will throttle like the M3 Max did in the 14-inch body? My assumption is yes, especially once we are looking at the peak performance and combining CPU and GPU load. I assume that by themselves, both the CPU and the GPU, right, separately, will deliver very good results. It's when you combine those workflows, then when I expect we would see some throttling. But of course, I cannot. Apple might have improved cooling for all I care. Let us actually look here into the tech specs, and let's look at the weight of the devices, size and weight actually. Size and weight, size and weight, size and weight. Size and weight still. There it is. Yeah, so the M4 weighs less than the M4 Pro by 0.1 pounds, and the M4 Max weighs another 0.1 pounds on top. So you can ask yourself, is that additional cooling capability enough here, like those 20 grams? I don't think it is to fully sustain combined CPU and GPU peak performance, but it's not going to be bad. And the base M4 also gets space black now. This is very smart. Making space gray at all, in my opinion, for laptops at this point is futile. Like, I have a space gray MacBook Pro. The only reason I bought it is because I still like it more than silver, but if there had been space black or even a midnight color available, that's what I would have gotten. So yeah, it's a smart choice. It's also just logistically smarter to, for one, the battery capacity is now the same in each configuration. The colors are the same. So Apple, the amount of holes even drilled into the device are the same, because obviously previously the regular M4 version didn't have the USB-C, the third USB-C port on the other side. So you can actually reduce, reuse a lot of tech from one model to the next. So let's look at the chips. Apple today announced M4 Pro and M4 Max. That's not fully correct. M4 Pro was technically announced yesterday. They're using second generation 3 nanometer technology, so that's N3E. That's the same as in the A18 and the A18 Pro chips. It's the same. Well, basically, the M4 is basically the same M4 as it was already in the iPad Pro anyway, so we already know some things about the M4. The GPU built on the breakthrough graphics architecture introduced in the previous generation with faster cores and 2 times faster ray tracing engine. So I would be still very surprised to see if optimized ray tracing tasks, maybe not Blender itself, but maybe some kind of under rendering solution, or maybe Blender in a month after getting a significant upgrade, if we don't see higher than those 3.6 times or 3.2 times improvements over M1. This seems like there is a huge uplift. They learned from their base M3 MacBook Pro mistakes. Now the base M4 is a perfect deal. Yeah, I actually agree. 3 ports. You can argue about 512 gigabytes not being enough, but I have a 1 terabyte model and I don't even fully use up like 350 gigabytes at any given time. So somebody who has always been used to less space doesn't experiment, for example, like me, with emulators and some Windows applications. Like I have like even Parallels on this with a Windows 11 virtual machine. Like I just don't see like most people struggling with 512 gigabytes, especially considering how much stuff these days is actually in the cloud, right? Like granted, the MacBooks still don't have 5G for some reason, but you can use the hotspot from your iPhone to watch videos even outside. You can even if you have like university Wi-Fi, you can use like all your like OneDrive files on it even without downloading each and every one to the device, except maybe the latest ones. Yeah, I actually agree. Like it's basically perfect. I think it would be absolutely perfect with something like 768 gigabytes, or even better 1 terabyte. But this is where Apple will say, well, just pay $200 extra, right? What's the big deal? If it's so perfect, you can stomach to pay us like 10% more. So this is actually really good to see. So across the board, Apple is talking about a 2 times faster ray tracing engine. I would love to see tests for that. Kev Chat, I have 200 gigabyte to transfer to new MacBook Pro, so I'm between 512 and 1 terabyte. It's an $180 difference. Do you get education discounts for storage stuff? I forgot that. I bought my MacBook Pro back when I was still in university, so I don't remember if I got discounts on like a per upgrade basis, but it would make sense, right? Because the educational discounts are adjusted percentage-wise to the overall price. I used only 60 gigabytes of storage in my 256 gigabyte iPhone in 3 years. Yeah, I'm actually very similar here on my M1 iPad Pro, which is my last device with like 256 gig of storage. And even that one isn't full. And my 1 terabyte iPhone 15 Pro Max isn't anywhere near close to full. So yeah, I fully understand it. So there is more memory bandwidth. We've talked about it already. We talked how the M4 Pro and M4 Max don't actually use 7500 mega transfers per second LPDDR5X memory, but actually 8533. And with the larger memory bus of the M4 Pro versus the M3 Pro, that gives you 75% more memory bandwidth. I'm also not sure about the nano texture glass. It seems tempting. I don't know. I think most people will probably not need it. Yeah, it's really difficult because I have never liked Apple's nano texture coating too much whenever I go to like the Apple store and look at like the Pro Display XDR there that they have with this version. It never appealed to me, to be honest. But if you actually work a lot outdoors, well, granted, you already have the benefit of now the 1000 nits peak brightness. Maybe that would be enough already. And if you're really looking forward to nano texture, I maybe would recommend waiting for like reviews for it, right? Maybe people will tell you it actually looks really good. Apple further improved on it or something like that. I'm impressed with M4 Pro. Gotta thank more PC competition for a MacBook Pro update in tech and pricing. Yes, as I said, more PC competition, but also more competition from Apple itself. By the way, one thing that Apple didn't upgrade today, they didn't give the M4 iPad Pro throughout the board like 16 gigabytes of memory. I think they should have. I think that would have increased the value proposition actually quite a bit, but I assume they still want to like really differentiate the 1 terabyte and 2 terabyte models. Also, and they should have dropped with it the pricing of the 1 terabyte model by $200. Oni-chan, I find it funny that Apple has to mention Blender for 3D on Mac because it's the only native 3D app for Mac OS now. Yeah, that's a big issue. I've heard from many people that it's not as much even the performance of Blender that holds them back in like using Macs for 3D workloads. It's really the fact that a lot of other 3D apps aren't on macOS at all, or they like never even got like Metal API support or never Apple Silicon support, right? And yeah, a lot of people are saying, look, I use Blender for most stuff, but for some auxiliary stuff, I use some other application that might be better in like fluid simulation or something like that. And so a lot of those professionals, unfortunately, still cannot switch to Macs because of that. YTKR, all the M3 devices Apple released didn't overheat. I think it will be the same on the M4 Max. Yeah, M3E is definitely a good, like, efficient thing. Plus, Apple's architecture here is definitely good too. But don't forget, that's still, like, Apple, if this was a large vapor chamber heatsink or something like that, the amount of power the M4 Max uses is really not that high, even by many laptop standards. Sometimes we have just the CPU use as much power on like an Intel-based system as like the M4 Max would use combined for its CPU and GPU. Very often we have like RTX 3070s or 4070s or 4080s that by themselves will be tuned to work at like 105, 120 watts. I believe we even have like laptop cards that go up to 140 watts. I believe 140 watts is something that the M4 Max cannot even consume right? Even when you combine like a power virus workflow for its CPU plus a full workflow on the GPU, maybe it could get close to that, but definitely not exceeded by much. And now we're talking just the GPU versus an entire SoC. So definitely if Apple were like crazy, like Razer or whatever, and giving you like those super elaborate cooling systems and also willing to accept very high fan noise, then yeah, I definitely would say the M4 Max won't overheat. But also overheating is a bad word, right? If it loses like 5 or even 10% of its performance, that could be just intended behavior, so it doesn't end up using too much of your battery life. Because sometimes a 5 to 10% reduction in performance is actually more equivalent to like a power draw reduction of like 25 to 30%. So yeah, I don't think that those machines will underperform your expectations. James, Mac Studio still stuck with M2. Yeah, according to Mark Gurman, Mac Studio is getting upgraded sometime in the first half of 2025, but then unfortunately the Mac Pro will be upgraded in the second half of 2025. So highly recommend, if you're like interested in high performance Apple devices, in considering the M4 Pro Mac Mini or like an M4 Pro or M4 Max MacBook Pro. Unfortunately, the Studio and the Pro right now are just not on a good page. A neural engine that's up to 2 times faster than the previous generation. Again, quite a nice promise. So, but that almost confuses me why the upgrade over M1 at that point is only 3x, right? Because that would assume that the upgrade from the M1 neural engine to the M3 neural engine is 1.5x. So that leaves about 20% per upgrade, from M1 to M2 20% faster, from M2 to M3 20% faster, and then doubling it for the M4 to get to 3x. But I remember the uplifts being much larger than that sometimes. So maybe it's just that Apple now really doubles down on those integer 8, or if you go to Geekbench AI, I believe it's called quantized results, where Apple is able to double the TOPS rating. But when it comes to real world performance, I actually cannot promise you anything, because for some reason Apple promises you something as low as 1.6x, then 3x in others. So it might really depend on the specific task. Oni-chan, seeing how M4 Mac cost the same price as before, not sure M4 Studio will cost the same as previous Model 2. Highly doubt though. I assume it will be more expensive, but also come with more base memory, similar to the M4 Pro Mac Mini that went from 18 gigabytes. The M2 Pro Mac Mini, I believe, actually still started with 16 gigabytes of memory and went to 24. So maybe we'll see a similar upgrade on the Mac Studio, just percentage-wise. Mark, are we checking the new Snapdragon Elite with the silicon carbide batteries in upcoming streams? Yes, once we actually get reviews for those products. I so freaking hate how the keynotes of like Chinese companies look. I also am not willing to even a lot of the stuff really hasn't come out in any way. Like, as much as they've talked daily about, for example, the OnePlus 13 or whatever, right? Like, there is still no device actually in the hands of reviewers outside of Geekervan, unfortunately. But yeah, I will look into that down the road. I don't see a reason for not doing that. I know a lot of you guys like that. Like, Xiaomi just announced the Xiaomi 15 series, which is weird because they also just announced the Xiaomi 14T series, which still features the Snapdragon 8 Gen 3. So I guess that's more similar to like what the iPhone 15 was to the 15 Pro, right? Where it's basically using a last gen chip, but basically launches almost at the same time. And they also launched their tablets, which again, I would never consider using an Android-based tablet because if I want like an unoptimized tablet experience, at that point I will get myself a Windows-based tablet, and at least I will be able to game a bit on it. That was going to give me much more peace of mind. Let me look into how my video is working. You guys know I'm always paranoid about that kind of stuff here. Okay, it seems fine. Okay, let me look. What else do we have? Let's see in the actual discussion in the actual promises. So the neural engine, again, I talked about some discrepancies here in the past. What else do we get? Protecting privacy for AI workflows. Oh, Maximus actually been able to join today, leaving a 119 super sticker with, I guess you're sad. Are you busy again, brother? Is that the point? Let us know. This emoji looks so sad for some reason, or it looks worried. I'm not sure what exactly, but thank you for the super sticker. If you can chat, that's very much appreciated. Combined with Apple Silicon. Here's Johnny Cerrucci. M4 phenomenal performance and new capabilities. So we do have, of course, the explanation for the M4 architecture, right? We know it's 4 P cores, 6 efficiency cores, 10 white instruction decode, 10-core GPU with dynamic caching, hardware accelerated mesh shading, 2 times faster ray tracing acceleration, and an improved scheduler in general. I actually don't know if that scheduler can improve anything, given if games optimize for it. We've seen some testing with like new schedulers on like a new tile-based rendering solutions inside like the Snapdragon X Elite and the Dimensity 9400. Don't know if maybe some of that is happening here too. I know it's technically a very separate thing, but it's still interesting. M4 supports up to 32 gigabytes of unified memory, has higher memory bandwidth, 120 gigabytes, more external support. We know all of that. Now we get to M4 Pro. Still, we see all of those details about the actual CPU architecture. Nothing new here. The efficiency cores are, as we looked into Geekervan stuff, if the efficiency cores are the same as on the A18 chips, they are absolutely unbeatable. And Apple has, of course, next-gen ML accelerators and scalable matrix extension support. So this thing will be a beast in Geekbench. But also, I know some people have called like Geekbench like, oh, Apple Bench. It's like optimized for Apple to make Apple look good. But currently, Cinebench gives Apple like a huge advantage in single core performance that AMD couldn't overcome with the highest clocked Zen 5 chips, and Intel cannot crack with Arrow Lake or Lunar Lake, and before that, what was it? Meteor Lake was the mobile part. Let's say the 4900 KS even at its highest 6.2 gigahertz. Right, so whenever people are like, "Oh, this is not real" or something like that, well, apparently Cinebench isn't real either, and Spec 2017 isn't real either. So I've seen some people say on Twitter, "Oh, how can Apple call this the fastest core on a chip?" And I'm like, "Well, yeah, it has the fastest single core performance of any consumer processor." Only negative is 15-day return policy. I think, yeah, sometimes you just have to decide quickly what you want. 20-core GPU with all of those enhancements. M4 Pro goes up to 64 gigabytes of unified memory. Wait, is that available on the MacBooks? I thought the MacBooks maxed out at 48 gigabytes on the M4 Pro. I saw some explainer page for that. 48 for the M4 Pro. Yeah, there is no 64. So I guess the 64 gigabytes is just a reference to the Mac Mini. That's a bit unfortunate. That's slightly misleading. Yeah, is it available here in this configuration? No, M4 Pro on MacBooks maxes out at 48 gigabytes, and on the Mac Mini you get up to 64 gigabytes. And the M4 Max starts at 36 and goes all the way up to 128. But for the 128, you have to choose one of the higher end configurations. Okay, so that makes sense. But also when we look at the tech specs here, actually, one thing that is very cool about this M4 Max versus the M3 Max is the memory bandwidth. When we actually look into it here, you see there is no difference in peak memory bandwidth depending on the amount of memory that you get. Previously, if you got the binned version, you also got a lower memory bus, right? You got a smaller memory bus with less like memory modules populated basically next to the die. And so you got 300 gigabits per second on the binned version and 400 gigabits per second because it had more memory modules. Kevchata, if you upgrade RAM, maybe it goes to 64 gigabytes. You mean if you upgrade storage with it? No, I've seen that somewhere. Like, I believe it was even on Apple's site. Did they explain about the chips itself on the thing here? Well, I guess I can add storage. Like, let's add 8 terabytes. Let's do that on the M4 Pro though. M4 Pro. Let's give it 4 terabytes of storage. No, it still maxes out at 48 gigabytes. If you actually go to, there it is. 36 gigabytes available with M4 Max with 32 core, 48 gigabytes available with M4 Pro or M4 Max with 40 core GPU, 64 gigabytes or 128 gigabytes only available with the fully enabled M4 Max. So the M4 Pro on Apple's laptops does not get the full 64 gigabytes the way the Mac Mini did. And that's probably because Apple's argument is, look, if you want 64 gigabytes, you might as well also pay us for the luxury of getting the M4 Max. I think this is basically their pitch here. Here are the chips again. So 273 gigabytes per second bandwidth. That also helps with AI chip. They say it's 2 times the bandwidth of any AI PC chip. I'm almost wondering what is that AI PC chip? AI PC chip performance data from testing the... Okay, so they just mean a recent Lunar Lake release, because Lunar Lake has a 128-bit bus and it uses 8533 memory, which means this should just be double. Makes sense because it's a 256-bit bus but the same speed memory. It's interesting that they call it an AI chip, but I guess that's because that's the branding Intel is trying to use and Microsoft. But it's not like it's a dedicated piece of AI focused hardware. I was a little confused by that. This huge boost in performance makes building and testing apps across multiple simulators in Xcode quicker than ever. I mean, it better be. It's more bandwidth, it's more single core, more multi-core performance across the board. All the advantages of Thunderbolt 5. Again, we talked about how Thunderbolt 5 technically supports DisplayPort 2.1, but Apple doesn't list resolutions and frame rate combinations, refresh rate combinations that would be more indicative of actually DisplayPort 2.1. Maybe Apple doesn't want to use display stream compression specs in their advertised features, but then they do advertise 4K 240 over HDMI 2.1, which of course does require It does require display stream compression as well, because 4K 120 is technically what HDMI 2.1 was optimized for. That's why the consoles are 4K 120 over HDMI 2.1. This idea that you now get double that without dramatically more bandwidth, that's obviously a result of using display stream compression. On your channel, I'll wait 3 months before deciding what to buy. I'll let others be the test subjects first. That's not a bad thing. And if you later buy, for example, over Amazon rather than Apple, at that point you might get a solid 10% discount. Especially if you're willing to wait like the full 3 months or something like that. M4 Max, the most powerful chip for a pro laptop. Again, 16-core CPU, so that's 14 performance. That's 12 performance for efficiency cores, or in the bint version, it's 10 performance and 4 efficiency cores. Actually, the same as the fully enabled M4 Pro, and of course, you get 40. GPU cores. Again, I wish they would have given us something like 48 here. I think that would have actually made some of the ridiculous upgrade pricing more justified. But for now, I actually think that the M4 Pro is the MVP of this generation. And yeah, the comparison here again with the latest AI PC chip, which is just a Lunar Lake APU. So heavy workloads like denoising raw video footage in DaVinci Resolve Studio can now run in real time. Congratulations. Now, this is actually interesting to me because I have an M1 Max device, probably not a super high performance one because obviously I have the 14-inch version, but 2.2 times faster CPU, that's great, and that's almost 2 times faster, 1.9 times faster than my M1 Max MacBook Pro. So actually this upgrade isn't really tempting me. I myself have said that I probably am waiting for something 3 times faster or more, and sure, that applies to stuff like AI and tasks that use a hardware accelerated ray tracing. But for everything else, while those upgrades are nice, I still have to say, God, my M1 Max MacBook Pro absolutely rocks. AI branding is overused nowadays. Everything is AI, this AI, that, absolutely, unfortunately. Jamies, I have a 2015 MacBook Pro Intel Core i5 Core 2 Duo with 8 gigs of RAM and 128 gigs SSD. So the base model Mac Mini will be a big upgrade for me. Yeah, that is a huge upgrade. You're saying base, once again, I've said to people, if you buy a Mac Mini, you can of course make do with the base version because you can utilize external storage. I still would recommend, if you can, to get the 512 gigabyte SSD. That will just make it all the much better and potentially even improve its longevity. But I understand if you don't want to add 33% of the price just to add double the storage. Of course, this is something I really sympathize with, and this is why I've speculated that next year we are getting higher base storage configuration. So M4 Max bandwidth 546 gigabytes per second. They say up to, again, which is a little bit, which I assume just means that not every task will go that far, but there is no difference between the bint M4 Max and the fully enabled M4 Max, unlike what we got with the M3 version, of course. Then M3 capabilities, media engine capabilities, we have 2 video encode blocks, 2 ProRes encode and decode blocks. This is where Apple's like in-house benefits really come handy. While ProRes is an Apple developed codec, there are actually plenty of cameras that support it. So if you can work with ProRes, highly and it, well, you actually make money from it, right? Highly recommend actually getting the Max version at this point, so you have double, well, especially if you're also using a lot of streams of a lot of video files of ProRes, potentially even like 6K or 8K, so you can zoom in to make a nice 4K image, maybe even apply some super sampling to make the image look sharper. So what I'm basically trying to get it, if you can leverage it for your workflow and potentially get like the smoothest editing experience you can get anywhere, get yourself a camera that supports ProRes, and then get yourself a MacBook with double the ProRes encoders and decoders. And then Apple keeps talking about Apple Intelligence, but thankfully for not too long. So this wraps it up about here. Let us briefly look into the tech specs again if we find anything surprising. Oh no, actually, guys, I have to take something back. The M4 Max is actually binned. The binned version does have fewer memory modules, and it only gives you 410 gig. Okay, so that explains Apple's up to, and that also explains the difference. But why is that here? Why is that with the chip and not also an explanation with the memory, right? Because I looked it up here, but it wasn't here. Okay, so if you want the full memory bandwidth on the M4 Max, you have to get the higher end version. That's a bit unfortunate, but I guess 410 gigabyte per second here is still more than the highest end M3 Max and M2 Max and M1 Max. But if you really want a chip with much more memory bandwidth, now you have to get the fully enabled M4 Max. I skipped this somehow. You see here, the M4 Pro, it just gives you 273 across the board. And then here, this M4, I should have looked at this M4 Max because it isn't as confusingly written as with the configurable 2. But I just jumped to the lowest point and I just saw that it said 546 here. That's so stupid. Because when I look at just the memory, previously, I believe they mentioned in the memory section the differences in bandwidth too. Maybe I'm wrong. So this is one thing I have to correct, unfortunately. But I guess it's better to correct this, right? We talked about the battery life promises already. Okay, so all the other specs. Of course, you still, by the way, are limited to 1080p HD video recording, even though you now have a 12 megapixel center stage camera. I would be very interested to see if it has any downsides to the solutions that we have in like the iMac or even like the iPad Pro. I assume it's probably the absolute same hardware, maybe slightly optimized for the thinner form factor. So would be that would also give some interesting tests. You have those high fidelity 6-speaker sound system with wide stereo sound. Maybe that is improved somewhat through the new chips. Sometimes audio, video capabilities improved by that, but I assume not too much. I assume the next big audio revolution is only happening when Apple makes these devices somehow larger and heavier, because obviously here it's not too crazy of a device. Given its capabilities, it's really not too oversized. So respect to Apple for making it reasonably sized. Of course, you get even better speakers on the 16-inch version. There it gets also a little heavier. Funny enough, you don't get too much of a difference in weight between the M4 Pro and M4 Max. Just 10 grams rather than 20. Maybe it just didn't make logistical sense to make the difference too profound, but yeah, keep that in mind. Technically, you can get the 14-inch version just a little bit lighter if you go for the lower end chips. And yes, you can. A MacBook can weigh almost 5 pounds. And when we compare, last but not least, to the last gen version, so let's look at the let's say the M4 doesn't interest us too much. So let's look at the 14-inch with M3 or M Pro Max. First of all, I actually would like to see the battery promises here. So 14-inch M4, and let's look at 14-inch M4 Pro or M4 Max. Still no AV1 encode, even on the Max chip, by the way. You are limited to AV1 decode, so if your workflow really is AV1 important. So the M4 Pro bandwidth is binned. No. The M4 Max bandwidth is binned. And that, I guess that makes sense, because 36 gigabytes is 6 modules of 6 gigabytes, right? While the Max chips can actually handle 8 modules. So yeah, you get limited bandwidth, 25% less versus the peak, 410 versus 500 and what is it, 46. But the M4 Pro is a 270, what is it, 273 or something like that across the board. What is the exact specification here again? Introduces, where's M4 Pro bandwidth? 273. 273 on all M4 Pro, and M4 Max is 546 tops. Not tops like trillion operations per second, but at most, or 410 on the binned version. So I'm very happy that I was able to provide that clarification here. So let's look at the specs comparison here. Where did I open it? So I'm very curious here about the battery life. Did I skip it already? Okay, so it's up to 22 hours of battery life on the M3. So the M4 improves battery life just across the board. If we look at here at M3 Pro, you actually see a huge uplift of 4 hours to the 14-inch with M4 Pro and M4 Max. And let's just compare the 16-inch version with the new 16-inch version. There you got a slightly smaller uplift, but still a decent one of 2 hours. CapChatter, M4 Pro, 273 gigabyte bandwidth, odd number, doesn't sound unbinned. No. You can actually configure, you can actually calculate it pretty easily. It's 8533 memory over a 256-bit bus. So the number is weird because of the mega transfers per second speed of, the fully enabled M4 Max gives you exactly double that at 546. That still sounds like an odd number to me. But yeah, you can actually, where is it? Calculate memory bandwidth. I believe there was a website for it, RAM calculator. Oh my god. My memory runs at 8533. I'm using a DDR system, LPDDR5X, and my channel is 256-bit white, and that gives us 273 gigabits per second bandwidth. You see? I don't know what it's doing with GB press, but yeah, this is the correct number here. If we do the same over a 512-bit bus, you see the 546 peak here. Yeah, I believe I would have to adjust one of the other things to not give me those different total numbers. But this is the correct number. I don't know which one I would have. Oh, my memory runs in one channel. Yep. Oh, no, wait. Well, total bandwidth here. Yeah, whatever. it's so stupid the way this website works. My RAS to SAS to CAS delay, I have no idea how to configure any of that. Wait, is there a difference if I say HBM? No. Why is that? What is that changing? Okay, whatever. You guys see there is something here, but I have done very little to repeat all that stuff. So I haven't cared for that specs, those nerdy stuff for a few years now. So I guess I am a little bit rusty. Maybe somebody in the community can help you make the exact same calculation, but this is the correct number to look at, for at least for Apple here. So you get battery life upgrades here as well. Let's look at here, by the way, 150 gigabytes per second memory bandwidth on M3 Pro, 273, so nice uplift there. But actually, the display here, the brightness, 1000 nits sustained full screen, 1600 nits peak, but this is all XDR specs. When Apple originally showed off that mini LED screen, they mentioned that 1000 nits sustained full screen without talking about XDR, right? So a lot of people assumed that it would just be the regular peak brightness for SDR content. And no, it has only happened now, and gratefully for all of us, it has happened across every MacBook, right? Even the smaller 14-inch version, even the base M4 version. And of course, we've talked about to death now between the difference of Thunderbolt 4, Thunderbolt 5, the fact that every M4 now has 3 USB-C ports. It's just that, of course, those are different specs. Some of you have mentioned the difference between like Space Black now also being available on the base version, while previously, if we go to the 14-inch MacBook Pro, it was available in Space Gray on silver. So there are some changes across the board. You just have to decide for yourself which one matters more to you. For MacBook Pro battery longevity, is it better to use 70 or 96 watt adapter? To be honest, I don't think it matters that much. I wouldn't necessarily pay extra for a faster adapter, right? I believe you can do so, because the base version still comes with a 70 watt adapter. Let me see, can you upgrade it in pricing to a 96 watt adapter? Pre-order. 14-inch. Let's go here, 70 watts. I believe it's like a few dollars, right? Yeah, so for $20 you get the 96 watt adapter. To be honest, I probably would get it just because, like, well, $20 is basically nothing in comparison to the rest of the money, and it will not be dramatically worse for battery life because it's still very, like, Apple doesn't go too crazy. It basically will only try to go like all 100 watts if you're also simultaneously running something high performant on the device, and it's very quickly draining the battery simultaneously. That will impact your battery health way more than the speeds at which it charges while it's basically in standby. Yeah, I rarely worry about Apple's devices in that regard. As long as you get like an authentic charger and you use the device in somewhat like nice ways, maybe set up a charge limit or something like that, that's good. Would I worry between like 70 and 96 watts? Probably not, but probably you aren't even getting that much out of the $20 extra. I guess it's a nice to have. I don't like how big my 96 watt adapter is for my MacBook Pro, but I guess I'm happy that I can always supply it with more power than it can draw. But your MacBook Pro is never really drawing more than 70 watts at one time. It's more about keeping the charge between 20 and 80%. Adapter doesn't affect that. I guess it can build up a little bit more like heat because it charges faster. But don't forget, this is a MacBook. It can cool itself. and also it can just regulate the charge level at which it receives from the wall. It's not forced to accept heat that actually hurts it down the line. Guys, we're about 2 hours into the stream. I'm quickly wrapping this up. Let me know one last question or demand or suggestion from you guys. I don't know when is the next time I'll be able to stream. I'll hope I can put in a stream tomorrow. Otherwise, I'll be back on Sunday because yes, I do have to get home and I do still have to meet some family and friends over the next couple of days. And tomorrow I am going trick or treating with my nephew and nieces, which you just saw one of them at the very beginning of the stream. So I apologize that I cannot keep the ball rolling as much as I would like to. We have so many new people in the community. This is absolutely insane. Thank you so much for growing this channel, for growing these chats, for growing my Twitter followers, and just for making this a much more pleasant experience. I've been streaming more hardcore, I guess you could say, for about the last year, but I've been keeping up this channel for a little over 2 years now. I'm doing this as a hobby while I'm working, while I was finishing med school, now while I'm working at the hospital. I'm a dermatologist in training, if anybody is interested. So thank you so much. This has been absolutely incredible these last the last 2 days, but also with today, 3 days now. It's absolutely phenomenal to have you all here, to have your feedback, to have your likes, to have your impressions, to have some of your direct support. It all means so much to me. This is a last shout out before we finish up, to like the video, share it out to anybody who you think might enjoy it, subscribe to the channel, and to support this channel directly, super chats, super stickers, channel memberships, Patreon subscriptions, whatever you choose to do. Please also consider following me on Twitter. There I also share a lot of my opinions, a lot of tech, sometimes some political. Let's see if you like those opinions. And of course, hit the notification bell so you actually know the next time I'm going live. I see most of you are also slowly drifting off. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you for making this super lively. I'll see you guys next time. This is Mark Tech, tuning out.